Welcome to a new Scale Up Porto Masterclass. Today, we are promoting this marketing and sales session together with Product Management Nights, the team here in Porto. And that's why we have here today Carlos Pestana. Carlos, do you want to share a little bit about what Product Management Nights is and what you do?
Yes, of course. So thank you, Daniela. Hi, everyone. It is great to see so many people with interest in product management. So product management nights are organized by a group of 5 product managers that are actively working to bring product people together in order to exchange experiences and advance also the product craft. Every quarter, we try to organize at least one meetup or webinar where we bring experienced product people to share their experiences, their learnings over time, and their knowledge. And in this event, we try to promote discussions. And we believe that we are succeeding on that goal, considering that we have really long Q&As. So besides this event, we also want to support local companies in making product management one of the leading function in their organizations. So if you are in this situation, we can help for that. And if you have interest in knowing more about us, you can follow us in our meetup channel. So thank you.
Invited Rohan Garg, VP of Products at Kununu, that will be helping us discuss product market fit, how to measure it and how to achieve product market fit.
So first of all, hi everyone in Porto. I would have loved to do this session face-to-face, but here are things, and that is why we do it online. I still hope it's useful. A little bit about me. So this is me in Douro Valley last year. When I visited Porto, I also had a chance to go to Douro Valley, which was really, really beautiful. About me, I am originally from India. I've been living in Germany last 7 years, slowly becoming more German than Indian over a period of time. I have been working in the tech industry since 2006, looking for product market fits mostly. I have had various roles. So I have a background in computer science. I have a background in business, and I've done multiple roles. So I have done software engineering jobs. I've done machine learning. I've published tech research papers. I've done a lot of product management stuff, and I've also done a couple of startups. So that's my overall experience. Yeah, mostly everything is a series of failures with some glimpses of success in between. That sort of sums it up. And currently I'm working at Kununu. I'm a colleague from Carlos, and I'm responsible for building products and businesses. So that's a little bit about myself. Next slide. And now we are here today to discuss product market fit. As I said before as well, this is a very broad topic, and we can discuss it for hours. We originally scheduled 1 hour, then we lost 10 minutes. So I would try to limit it to sort of much more to my experiences, what I've learned trying to find product market fits, and what I can tell you about my journey, and hopefully you find some relevant stuff for yourself as well from that. Before we do that, I would suggest that we look at least at some basic frameworks. Carlos, that's the next slide. Yeah. And when Carlos asked me to do product market fit, I did some Googling as well, like all of us do, to see, okay, what other people write about product market fit. And I found these 3 sort of models which were very popular across the internet. The first one is a very simple one. Here, if you see, there's a product and there's a market, and then there's a fit in between. I think it's a very, very simplistic view. So that's pretty obvious. Then on the left, you have a model that was created by Dan Olson. So this is also pretty similar, where on the top you have this product pyramid, and then at the bottom you have the market pyramid. And you create a product which is a mix of features, UX, value proposition, and somehow this has to be matched against a certain target customer and their needs and their expectations out of a certain product. So that's how they define it. And then on the right, you have this very typically used framework of viability, desirability, feasibility, Okay, so what's viable, what can be made, is it desirable or not, and then is it technically feasible or not. So these are sort of the most common frameworks that I looked at. I think they are helpful, definitely, to understand the definition of product market fit. I generally believe that the reality is much more nuanced. And what I also read a little bit, and what I also felt when I was writing about my experiences, is that product market fit is not something that you see on a piece of paper. I think it's something that you feel. When you run a business every day, when you talk to customers, when you talk to your users, when you look at your unit economics, when you look at your marketing performance, when you look how other people talk about your business, I think all of those things combined sort of give you a feeling that you have got something or you haven't got something. So for me, it's more of a feeling, and I think that's what I'm going to talk a bit more about. So Carlos, if you can go to the next slide. Exactly. So how could it be described like a feeling? And as I will go forward, I will definitely talk about how I felt it. But first, I would like to share this really cool quote by Mark Andreessen from Andreessen and Horowitz. And I will share this presentation, by the way, so please feel free to read afterwards. But at a high level, what he talks about is something very similar. So you always know when the product market fit is not happening. So your customers are not getting value. They're not happy. They're not talking about it. Your usage, sort of your engagement metrics are not good. You don't get press coverage. I mean, your sales cycles take too long because people are not excited enough. They always shift it to the next quarter and so on. And it's also very difficult to raise money when you're running a business which hasn't met this product market fit. But at the same time, you can also feel it when it's happening, right? So you see that the usage is growing, you see that customers are using your product, and you get a lot of feedback from your customers. You want to scale up teams. Everyone is there to invest money in your startup. I think he takes it a bit too far, and he says you also get Entrepreneur of the Year awards from Harvard Business School. Investment bankers are staking out your house. I think this is not so much applying to Europe. I think this is more the Silicon Valley story, but yeah. So you got the picture, right? So what he says here is that it's a mix of these different factors that give you this overall feeling whether product market fit is happening or not. And what I'm going to do in the remaining, let's say 20-25 minutes is talk about my experiences with these product market fits. So Carlos, if you can go to the next slide. Exactly, slide 9. And I've been very fortunate enough to be a part of founding teams of 2 different startups. So on the left, there's a startup called Buying Show. On the right, there's a startup called Gimondo. What Buying Show did was, or does up to a certain extent, is it provides brands and retailers an online platform to connect. So the problem that we tried to solve was, on one side, you have all these fashion brands who are looking for retailers. So imagine if someone of you has a very cool t-shirt brand here in Porto, and they want to, there is a comment, sometimes traction powered by marketing budgets is mistaken for performance. I'll come back to it. Thank you, Lily, for the question. And yeah, so I was talking about Buying Show, and basically what we were trying to do there was we were providing the brands a platform to connect with retailers. So if you are, let's say, a t-shirt maker here in Porto, and you want to start selling in Berlin because it's a very cool place, you heard, it's very difficult for you to find retailers. So you have 2-3 options. Either you go to Berlin, you actually walk around, you find retailers, you look at some databases, or you go to trade shows. All of these are very inefficient and very expensive ways of finding new business partners. So our vision was to create a platform that actually allows to do that. Few things about this business when we started. So it had a massive market size because fashion industry is really large within Europe. It's also Europe-wide, so it's not limited to one country. We had a very strong set of investors. So we had the CEO of Rocket Internet, Oliver Samber, as our board member, as a lead investor. We had Target Global as an investor, which is a very active investor here in Berlin. We had Zalando as a strategic investor. So we had a very good set of investors. We had some good PR initially. We also had a very experienced team. So we had one person coming from the fashion industry who had done this for 20 years. We also had a very strong tech team, a product team. We were also completely independent. So we had majority of the shareholding in the organization, and we had a pretty good shareholding structure. So that was not a problem, and we were pretty independent to make our decisions. And we also built a really cool product to start with. So this was Buying Show. On the right, there was Gimondo. What were we doing with Gimondo? So this was something where we tried to create a digital fitness platform. We're providing sort of content to work out at home. Pretty simple, I think. Most of you have seen it or heard about a concept like that. Again, this was a company that was limited to Germany. So it was a niche market. We had a strategic investor. So this was ProSieben, which is a very large media house here in Germany. That also meant that we were not fully independent to make all the decisions. So we had to do it along with ProSieben. Being a strategic investor, they also had a lot of say in the business. We had a pretty small and young founding team. We were operating within a corporate framework, as I said, and we had a pretty outsourced and a crappy product. So now my question is to you, and before Carlos, you jump to the next slide. Don't jump to the next slide. Okay, now you'll jump to it. No worries. What I wanted to ask you was, okay, what do you think would have worked and not worked? I think that's absolutely fine. Carlos gave the answer. So the one on the left, Buying Show, actually failed. And the one on the right, Gimondo, actually worked. And for me, this is actually quite, let's say, contradictory. So if I would look at any company to start with, and if I had to invest, I think 9 out of 10 times I would go and invest with Buying Show, because that's a company with a much better team, with a much bigger market, with a very cool value proposition, also a very good set of investors compared to the business on the right. And what I'm going to talk about a little bit is why we actually failed with Buying Show and why we actually succeeded with Gimondo. So Carlos, if you go forward. Yeah. So this is Buying Show. And these are some of the first set of screens that we actually developed. And I mean, these are not very high resolution because I had to find them on Google and some of my old slides. What you will see is we had a pretty cool product. I don't know if it's visible or not, but we had a very good team. We had a couple of very good designers, UX people, and we built a super cool product. And this is a B2B product. So this is more about sort of brands maintaining their overall supply chain. And they are all used to this very, very old school products and ERP systems. So for them, this was something which was actually quite cool. So that's on the product side. Carlos, if you go next slide. However, we had this cool product. One of the biggest reasons why we actually did not gain traction was we were operating in a very big market, but we did not really know who the target customer was. And here I have a very simple sort of 2x2 to explain the conundrum that we are in. So if you see on the x-axis, you have small retailers and big retailers. And if you see on the y-axis, there are these big brands and small brands. And we were sort of always very confused between what are the transactions that we want to enable on this online platform. So when we initially started with this idea, we said, we will always work with these small brands. And these small brands have the most problems to actually find retailers. So we started something with this bottom left quadrant, which was small brands and small retailers. The thing is, it never worked out because we realized that small brands are not trusted by small retailers and small retailers don't trust small brands because all these transactions are happening digitally, which is very different for a fashion industry because they generally have this feeling, okay, I will touch everything before I actually buy. And that's why we realized this doesn't work because there's a big lack of trust between these two parties. We actually moved forward and we said, we actually go to big brands and small retailers. When we went to these big brands and they said, I don't want to sell to small retailers. Then we said, okay, fine. Then we go to big brands and big retailers. So then we basically went to, I don't know, let's say a big brand, let's say Tom Taylor. And then we went to a big retailer, let's say Cardiff here in Berlin. And we said, we will match both of you. And then they told us, you know what, we've been doing business for the last 20 years. So we don't need you in between. And then we actually went to the last one, which was where we started building a product for retailers. And we said, for retailers, it would be much easier to actually use a digital tool to maintain all their buying. And that's where we realized that it's extremely difficult to actually integrate a product within their current supply chain systems. So as you can see, we basically went around this quadrant a couple of times, and we didn't really find a target segment that actually worked for us. So my first big learning was it doesn't really matter how big the market size is, so to say. It's really important, what's the target segment that you actually go after? Carla, should we go to the next slide? Thanks. Yeah, and this is also, again, what problem are we solving? So this is a very simple value chain for fashion brands. So what a fashion brand does, I mean, in a very typical retail setup is, they start designing their clothes. So they have these cool concepts and based on whatever is happening around the world and in the pop culture. And based on those designs, they actually show it to the brands and they say, this is what we can deliver you 6 months down the line. And the brands say, oh, cool, looks good. So here are the orders. So that's the part which is order collection. Typically brands, once they get the orders, they then have to go to the manufacturers to ask them to actually create these clothes. Because as you know, a lot of manufacturing is outsourced. So the brands don't have their own manufacturing hubs. They actually work with other manufacturers. But what the brands need in between is financing. Because before they actually give an order to the manufacturer, to the moment the clothes are actually sold with a retailer, it's like a 6 to 12 month gap in traditional retail. And that's why they have to finance this operational runway somehow. And that's why financing is really important. And of course, the last part is they actually deliver all of this to the retailer. So that's the value chain at a very, very simplified level. What we actually realized was we started very much on the left side. So we will focus on the brands to actually upload all their designs on a very cool platform. And then we will give them visibility to all the retailers and they can basically get these orders digitally. So that's the part which we focused for quite some time. At one point we realized this is not the only problem that they face. So they actually have a problem financing. And then we started going into the financing side. At one point we said, okay, let's also get manufacturers on our platform. So what happened as a result was we were really moving across this value chain without really sticking to one part of it. And that resulted in a complete lack of focus. So that was, again, the second big learning, that you have to be very clear about the exact problem that you're solving across this value chain. Kailash, next slide. 3 more points. The third one is, it's not just about the market size, it's also about the readiness of the market. So your product market fit would only work if the product that you're building can actually be used by the market that you're building it for. So we built this really cool product. I showed you a couple of screenshots. And then we went to these really traditional Italian and French brands, you know, sort of, I don't know, 50 kilometers outside Bologna and 100 kilometers outside Milan. And these people literally did not even properly know how to use emails. They were still using faxes. So the shift from taking order on a fax machine to actually taking it digitally was simply too big for them. And that's something we realized after 10 or 12 sales pitches. It's not about the product. It's actually much more about the market itself and the readiness of that market. The point 4 was, and this is really important. I mean, we spoke with so many people. We spoke with so many brands. We spoke with so many retailers. We never found anyone who was really happy with our services. You know, so they all said nice things and they all said, yeah, it's cool. They can think about using it. But there was no glint in their eyes that we could say, hey, we have actually cracked a problem here. So that was, I think, one big, very clear indicator that we had for quite some time. We realized, okay, this is not a product market fit. And last one, I think, which is also very important, if you start your business or if you're building products within a business, you cannot be too rigid with your business model and your future plans. So when we started this business, we had all these really cool people who wanted to build a big business and have a big exit and so on. And we were very let's say bullish when we had this really good set of investors on board. I think very soon that bubble broke because we realized that no one uses our product. But we still did not want to move away from the business model that we initially planned, that was there in our business plan. This was a marketplace where we saw that billions of euros of transactions would be happening on the platform, and we would have a 3-4%, whatever that number would be, cut on that. We realized that we cannot solve problems at the same side, and we cannot bring this marketplace together. And it was very difficult for us to accept that truth. So I think that was more on us, but I think you might face similar problems in the future. And I think that's where you also have to be a bit more flexible compared to what you planned originally. Yeah, so before I go to the startup that worked, I would quickly check the comments here. And Lily asked something. So traction powered by marketing budgets is sometimes mistaken for product market fit. It could be mistaken by product market fit, and sometimes it could not be. So I think what's very important is for any business to use marketing to acquire the initial set of customers and users. I think without that, it's very difficult to get a business off the ground. And I think it's fair that people use that. I think what happens is if people completely flout their unit economics and they completely flout the ideas of user value and use that for growth. So I mean, take the idea of ride sharing or food delivery. So if the food in a restaurant for delivery would cost 15 euros, and of course, in the long term, you do have to charge 4 to 5 euros to actually get that food to your home. But if you then give it to the customer for 10 euros in total, you have some sort of a product market fit because you have created this value, which is completely an economic value, which is not something that actually works. So I think that's where and in the past, there have been a lot of such businesses which have done that. How can you avoid that? I think you have to be very true to yourself, and you really have to look at your unit economics, and you have to look at the value proposition of the user in the long term, and you have to say, okay, are they both matching? And all the data that I today have, does that actually match the future? I mean, I've been part of Rocket Internet as well, and there were a lot of these logistics companies getting started at that time, and some of them actually became really big for quite some time, and then also went down. And I think the learning is that you cannot use marketing to make your way out of 5 years or 6 years and completely flout the basic rules of unit economics. I think that's would be my advice. How long did it take from starting to deciding to stop? We started the business I think we founded the company in October 2015. And I personally moved out in mid of 2017. So this was a little less than 2 years that I was there. I think the founder who remained tried it for another 1 year. But if I would own this company 100%, then I would have stopped it after 12 months. So I think it was quite clear to me that we don't have a solution. Cool. And Mary says it's all about learning to fail fast. Yeah, I mean, I agree. At the same time, please always remember that sometimes you might have something and it just takes time to actually get there as well. So, and I don't have a concrete answer on when you are failing versus when something is not working on your side. So I think that's where you just need to experiment a lot to see, is it the market or is it our offering? What is it that actually doesn't work? So that would be my advice. Cool. Let's move forward then. And I think I have to finish it in 10 minutes, the startup that worked. Kailash, if you go to the next slide. So these are the screenshots. That was the first time that we launched this product. And as you can see, it's a very basic product. Look at this big thing. It looks like a marketing banner, but it's actually, hey, you have done a good job. You have finished a workout. So this was the initial product that we launched. And it's definitely not as cool as the product that we launched with Buying Show. Kailash, can you go to the next slide? Yeah. And talking about the product market fit and why it works. So this is something that I took from one of the investor presentations that I did in 2014. So this was the overall market when it comes to fitness content. And on the y-axis, you have the scope of content. So what type of content is there? And then on the x-axis, there's the engagement part. And what we realized is there were so many different content platforms. I think the biggest one, YouTube, of course, Google in itself. You can keep Googling and you can find hundreds of articles about fitness, and a lot of other players. What we realized very early was that we will not win purely on the size of the content that we have on the platform. I think we realized very early that it's about the engagement that we have with the users. I'll talk a little bit more about it because it also relates to the target segment that we were going after. But what was very interesting was we realized very early that if you have to succeed in this market, it's a lot about connecting with the user. It's a lot about motivating the user and having this sort of conversation going on with the user to understand how do we actually get the user to the goals or to the fitness goals that the user has set for herself. So that was one big learning, and that also gave us clarity on this 2x2, which direction we want to move towards. Kalish, next slide, maybe. Next one. Yeah. And what I did was I also created a very similar value chain for a person who wants to get fit. And I'm not a fitness expert, but I know some of you may be. So take it with a pinch of salt. This is sort of, when you start going from this unfit to the super fit, there are these different stages that you go through. So on the left, you have, how do I get off the couch? So that's the first question that someone asks herself. How do I find time for a workout? And then you progress and then you say, how do I do my first high intensity interval training? And then there are these optimization paths, right? So how do I improve my 10K runs, which I know Carlos does a lot. And then on the rightmost, you have, how do I become a prime athlete? And when we were building Gimondo, what we realized is that there was a lot of competition on the on these two bubbles on the right. So you look at apps like Runtastic, MyFitnessPal, Map My Run, and so on, Freeletics, and there's so many very, very cool startups that all focus on helping someone get better with their workouts. What we realized was there's not a lot which actually works on getting you off the couch to doing your first HIIT. And that's the market that we felt was very open that time in Germany. And that's the market that we started targeting. So the big difference that I see compared to Baingshu was that we looked at this and we said, this is our playing area. And we never actually changed that because we realized it's absolutely the right strategy. Can you move on? Yeah, and how did we stumble upon this realization? And again, I mean, I'm not saying that I woke up with a dream that this is going to be the USP for our product. I think we pretty much stumbled. How did we stumble? So this business is a long history, but basically when we took it as part of our product portfolio as an incubator, we already had something live. And this was a super crappy product. So two people would actually log in and the system would crash. People would play a video for 10 minutes, the system would crash. Crash for everyone, not just for that user, crash for everyone. So this was a really, really bad system. And when we looked at it, it's like, why will someone ever use this? And then we realized there were actually more than 500 paying users. And the system was so bad that we didn't even know how much were they paying or what's the subscription model and so on. Everything was hidden in the code somewhere. But we did know that some people are paying, which was a great indication, right? Here you have a completely crappy product, but then you have still some people who stick to the product. The second indicator that we had was when we did our first relaunch and the first marketing campaign. I think our initial goal was 100, 200, something like that. And we really blasted our way through all those targets. So we got like 2,000 plus paying users within the first couple of weeks of campaign. So that was also a very good indicator. I mean, we realized very quickly that there's something here. Our first NPS survey was also a very good indicator. I mean, we had an NPS score sort of long-term over 54, 55, and we were never sort of very far below that. So it was a great NPS. I mean, this was the first time I was measuring NPS in my life. I didn't know what 50 meant, and now I know what 50 means. I mean, it's an extremely good score, and very few companies have it. But what was more interesting was we got a very high participation rate on the survey. So it's not just about the NPS score, it's about how much people actually feel about it, right? So the more responses that you get, I think the more you feel this emotion of your users, how connected they are to your product. And we got these extremely detailed responses. Like everyone was writing 1 page of feedback. So we had like 1,000 pages of feedback, literally. I was not very good at German that time, so I would just take it, put it in Google Translate and go line by line. And it was completely eye-opening. I mean, we did not really have to think what we needed to do. I mean, there was so much that our customers already told us. And then the last one is we realized that most 80% of users were women. And when we spoke with them, we realized that they either did not have the time or they did not have the confidence to go outside to work out. So all of this sort of very much told us, okay, here we have a target segment that really loves us. And we would do a very good job by sticking to this target segment. Kailash, next slide. Now, how did we use to focus more? So I think the first thing, as soon as we found this target segment, we said, we don't do anything outside it. And that was a time when fitness industry was really booming. I mean, there was so much investments going on. There were so many cool ideas, fitness bands, TV applications. We said no to everything. And being a product person myself, this was not easy because you always want to do this cool tech stuff. We didn't do any of it. And this also sometimes demotivated the teams up to a certain extent. But we also always spoke about who the user was and what the user wants. And I think this was always something of a discussion that kept going within the organization. What we also realized very early was it's not so much about how much content we create, but it's about how do we actually connect with our target segment. And therefore, we very early on invested a lot on CRM. So we became very good on CRM early on. So we would basically have exact details about how much of a video someone watched, how many push-ups did they do, how many pull-ups did they do, did they work out in the last 2 weeks, what did they eat, and all of this information would go into this engine in a data warehouse, and from there we would have these very, very targeted content that we would have for these different target segments. So someone who is really overweight with a very high BMI, hasn't worked for the last 2 weeks, would get a very different reminder versus someone who is churning out 5 workouts a week with in prime shape would get a very different reminder. And that was really the core of our business. It was all about how do we actually connect with the users. The third thing we did was we asked the users before building something. And here I just want to share a very quick story. The story of background music. So someone in our company actually at one point had this idea that all of our workouts had this really boring music in the background. And someone said, hey, why not actually integrate with Spotify or Deezer or some of these music streaming services and actually allow the user to play some music, or maybe we hire a DJ and the DJ can create music and so on. So we had all these cool discussions, how we can have like these different choices of music for people while they do workouts. And I actually went out, I connected with a couple of music streaming companies, started working on partnerships. The idea was cool, right? So everyone just believed in it. And then at one point, someone came up with the idea, let's also talk to the users. And what we actually found out was when we spoke of some of the users, what music you would like, they said, I actually do the workout on mute because I do the workout when my kids are sleeping. So I don't need music. And this was really eye-opening to have this conversation with our users and really start thinking again, okay, are we building the right product for these users? And then the last one is we built a great work culture. So first of all, everyone in our team actually had some sort of a fitness background, maybe other than me, shame on me. But we had a lot of trainers, we had a lot of nutrition experts, basketball players, ex-runners. So it was a really cool atmosphere where everyone was very, very passionate about fitness, about nutrition and so on. And everyone was really, really interested in getting other people fit. So I think we had this really good culture, which was built around that. And one of the things that we also did was every Friday, we would have our customer success person sort of read out some of the user feedback that we were getting. And the best user feedback that I heard was I wanted to share quickly. So we had this one woman who actually canceled the subscription. And she said, I'm canceling the subscription, not because I don't love Gimondo, but I really love Gimondo because Gimondo actually helped me to get from the couch and do my first proper workouts. But now I think I want to go out and join an actual gym. So that's why I'm canceling my subscription on Gimondo. And although it was a churned user, it was really, really good feedback for us because we realized our product actually goes in exactly the right direction that we want it to be. Yeah, so these are some of my learnings, how we focused more. Yeah, and this is my last slide, and I think maybe I take another 1 or 2 minutes. So what have I learned so far with product market fits? I think first is do not lie to yourself. When I look back, I think I knew where we do get product market fits and where we don't get product market fits. I think you mostly know it in your heart. I think a lot of us, we just fool ourselves, especially as founders and entrepreneurs, because we are so attached to those ideas. So I think that's definitely one thing to look out for. Second thing is always look out for those die-hard early adopters. So there are some people who will always use your product. Doesn't matter how buggy it is, crappy it is. So if you are basically thinking along the lines, okay, I do add one more feature and then I get 100 customers, I think most likely it will not happen. So whatever your product is, has to find some people who love the product. Otherwise, there is most likely a problem with what you are building or who you're building for. Third point I already touched upon. So do focus on the quality of feedback, but also focus on your response rates. If you have people who are writing a lot and who are giving you a lot of feedback, it means they care about your product. And maybe your product is not doing everything what they want, but you know if you do everything that they want, they will love it. So the response rates are extremely important. Fourth one, I think this is more for founders. You need to have a simple one-line pitch for your business and a very clear understanding of your target segments. If anyone asks what your business is about, and if you talk about it 5 or 7 lines, I think somewhere you don't have it absolutely nailed down. And this could most likely be a product market fit problem. And I know this from buying show where we would have like this long summary of what we do and 10 different things, because to be honest, there was not one thing that we did really well that our users and customers wanted. So I think it's very important that you have this simple one-line pitch. And the fifth one is, again, I mean, your business plans and your investor pitches, they need to be elegant, they need to be simple, people need to understand them very quickly. And it generally happens when you have a product market fit. It means you have a good understanding of your users. It means you have a good understanding of your unit economics. It means you're not creating a lot of assumptions and variables in your business plan. And in the end, your business plan is not looking out like some, I don't know, some massive Excel model that you need like half an hour to explain someone how it works. I think all these are indicators that you have or do not have product market fit. So yeah, these 5 are my learnings, and that's it. That's it from my side. Sorry again for the delay, because I think it leaves us with a bit less time for questions.
Rohan, thank you. We have here a question on the chat from Mary. Actually, we have 2. One is, how did you know the price point for the subscription model that you used to engage people so fast when you were testing?
Mm-hmm. A very good question. I mean, we stumbled upon it again. So we started with something like a 15 euros per month, which was, to be honest, high. Netflix wasn't live that time in Germany. We had a couple of dating platforms that we looked at for subscriptions, and we looked at a couple of other content platforms. I think we were a bit higher in price, and that's the whole point. So we still got these users. What we observed was initially that we had higher churn rate, especially after first 1 month, because in any subscription model, you have a high churn rate after the first 1 month, because some people just simply want to leave. Over a period of time, we optimized a lot more, and we actually went down, and we also increased our customer lifetime values. I remember from one of our investor pitches that we said is, so we had this yearly subscription model, and that was 60 euros a month. I don't know how much it is right now. I haven't checked, but that's where we said you basically get 1 month of workouts for price of 2 cups of coffee. So that was our general sort of punchline with regards to pricing.
We have here another question from Mary about the team. How did you find the right founders and to protect your ideas in the early stages of ideating that with them? Mm-hmm. And I would complete a little more this question. So how did you find the founders and protected your idea? And how do you manage the team that does this validation process? How's the team built? So you can actually not think only on features, but incorporate all this business side of it.
So how do you protect your ideas? I mean, mostly I would not protect them. I would actually share them with a lot of people. I think if you have a great idea, and I mean, to be honest, an idea is at a very high level. So I think if you have the idea, you will always have a vision as well. And that is very helpful. So I haven't seen, and also meeting a lot of entrepreneurs, I generally think that people like to talk about their ideas because they get a lot of feedback. And I think that's very, very, very helpful in the early stages. So, and typically also in the venture capital community, I think most VCs would not speak with you if you say, hey, let's sign an NDA because I think that you might be stealing my idea. I mean, they're not there to steal ideas, right? So unless you're building something on the hardware side and you're going on Indiegogo and you're doing some product campaigns, I think, yes, that's where you have to be a bit more careful. But if your idea is of a digital product, which has some really unique advantages that would only be achieved 3 years down the line, I don't see a reason why you would protect your ideas so much. How do you find the right founders? I think that's extremely tough. Generally, when you start something and if you're well connected, you would also go and talk to VCs, you would go and talk in your network. And that's where you start finding people one by one. So I think what is really important is that you don't start alone generally. I think that's generally not a good way to start. I think you need to have at least one more person because it's just such a tough time actually creating a startup that you don't want to do it alone. How I came across, so I think the first time it was complete serendipity. So I was part of an incubator and then I was basically given one more person to run the business along with me. And we got along well. So I think that was good. In the second time, I knew actually someone who was a founder in the Delivery Hero team. And this person knew some more people and he connected all of us. So that is how the second team came together. Yeah.
Rohan, you were mentioning all this process from identifying the need to developing on an incremental way the product that fits the market. But oftentimes the startups have a technology. They don't have a need. They have a technology they believe will solve a need. Mostly when you have a deep tech startup, and oftentimes you have something that you actually don't know what the target market should be, what's the segment, but you know you have something that's powerful. So this is kind of a reverse process. How should it be addressed?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times. I have a couple of friends who also develop such technologies, and then we discussed how they actually bring it to the market. I think what's very important is that if you are a team of, let's say, these extremely technical people who understand their technology very well, my first very practical advice would be to get someone who has done startups before, who could really guide you with the process. I think that would be extremely useful at a practical level. The second would be, you have to define a value proposition. So you have to forget about the technology a little bit, but you have to really go from a customer first perspective and say, what should I tell the customer? What is the problem that is getting solved? And you have to try different variations of that. Again, you have to go back to this fundamental principle that the problem that you are solving cannot be extremely complex that no one understands it. So the nature of it or the solution to it could be very complex, but in the end, the value proposition itself should be simple. So I think that's where you really have to focus and get it right. The other interesting idea is typically to actually take one pilot client. So for example, if you're doing this something in the B2B sector, I don't know, you're making some machine learning technology that helps insurance companies, I don't know, detect outliers or score people or so on. I think that's where, rather than building this technology in silo, it would be much better if you actually partner with an actual customer, because what you also realize sometimes it's not about the technology. Sometimes much more about solving the processes that you have on the other side. And a lot of people actually ignore that part where they say, oh, launching a product with an alliance should be easy, right? Because I have great technology. But then you realize Allianz is a company of, I don't know how many thousand people and how many different processes. And sometimes it might take years for you to actually get your product in there, even if they want it. So that's where I think you have to be extremely aware and make sure that you don't build this technology in silo.
Carlos.
Yes. So we have here one more question from Mari. Thank you. So and following your thoughts about value proposition. So Mari is asking, if you struggle to clearly define the value proposition, do you think that it means the idea is not feasible?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you have to challenge yourself and you have to say, okay, why do we do this? I mean, if you don't have a very clearly defined target segment, so for example, how you see with Gimondo, right? So you say, okay, getting these people off the couch, getting them to their first HIIT workout. And that's very simple to understand and for everyone, whoever you tell it to. So I think that's extremely important. Yeah, I mean, I would use a couple of frameworks. So I would look at the different target segments. I would look at how you define value proposition in terms of different numbers. But yeah, I think in general, it has to be simple enough at a high level. Otherwise you need to revisit this idea.
So we can stay for 2-3 more minutes. If you have any left questions, please let's keep sharing. Rohan, you said, well, how to build the team, how to get the founders, you spoke about it, but then you have the process of validating, of actually going there and put your hands on validating, speaking to the customers, trying to get the feedback, whether you're B2C or B2B, you have to build this process. How did you do that in Gimondo? How did you build the team to do this process?
Yeah. So with Gimondo, we always wanted to go to the market very fast because what we told our investor was, we will keep it a very lean business. We don't want a massive investment to actually redo the business and launch it again because we saw value in it. So we did a lot of outsourcing, to be honest, upfront. And if you look long term, a lot of people think, no, outsourcing is not a good idea because long term it doesn't work. But I mean, the question is there a long term or not? So the first product that I showed, so this was completely outsourced to a company in Ukraine. It was done inside 10 or 12 weeks or something like that. So we've made a lot of shortcuts with the idea that we will throw it away at one point if you see traction. So that was one. The second was we defined some user feedback KPIs, some performance marketing, unit economics KPIs to say, okay, what should we be able to reach before we decide if we want to do it forward? So that's where we have to do a very good job of defining those. Yeah, I would say those two would be the most important ones. So I think always keep the outcome in mind. So especially in the experimental phase, what do you want to learn? And what is it that will make you actually stop doing this? So if you define a target and say, if my product or if my business does not deliver this, then I will actually rather stop it. I think that's also a good way to think about it.
Yeah, go on, Carlos.
So Mary is also asking if you have any recommendations on the best sources to find good programmers.
I don't have recommendations either. I think in general, finding good people in your team takes a lot of time. And if you see the most successful companies, they take years and years to get those people on board. I think when you get a very initial team, let's say at least, and depending on what you want to do, you should definitely think about having a technical co-founder in your team and also outsourcing a part of the responsibility to that person. But I think what's very important is that initially when people join you, they join you because of your vision and because of your purpose. They know it's a lot of risk and they know they will not get paid at the same level in a lot of cases. So it's a lot about selling your vision. Yeah.
The first programmer definitely need to have the mindset and the expectations needs to be clear. The alignment needs to be clear. Because there is lots of risks and it's harder to find good programmers in a technical way with technical skills at the same time that they have the right mindset.
I think that we had here a good start to keep thinking about this process. So this should not be something that you do only at the beginning when you are starting your project. You should be doing this all the way. So while you keep evolving your product and your company. So even if you are a more mature startup, this is not something to forget about. Thank you, Rohan, for sharing with us your stories with your successful and not so successful startups, but actually it made you learn a lot even when you did not succeed as a business. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Carlos, for supporting this curation and this session. And for all of you that joined, keep following our social media channels where we'll be keep promoting our next sessions, whether they're masterclasses or other opportunities. Keep on the loop, and thank you for joining, and see you next time. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Bye. Take care.